Mhm. Hello, everybody. I'm blessed to be in front of and blessed to have a conversation with Miss Terra Padgett, a fellow fortune builder sister from another Mister, and being from Houston and being able to have her share her story with us. I like to kind of gravitate these conversations to a little bit of how do I like to say mindset, faith, and real estate. And so, with no further ado, Tara, thank you for taking some time out of your day to kind of have this conversation with me and my couple of guests. We talked about as we get better, more and more people will get to know what you're doing and seeing if by the end of the show they'd be interested in reaching out to you.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, thank you, George P. of Optimistic Glee, for having me here.
yes. Thank you. Yeah, Tara. Yes. If you don't mind telling us a little bit of, we're kind of, where it started, because I know when I came in, I was kind of alone in the pond of Houston, and saying, "Who's in fortune builders? Can somebody help me?" And I think you were one of the ones that when I first started, giving me a couple tips. So I appreciate you that on that point. But since then, I've seen you grow so much. So I'm just wanted to, be able to have this conversation with you, not only for the people watching, but for me to get to know you a little bit better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta love social media. That's where we first met on Facebook and connected. And, I think the Fortune Builders community is so great and that everybody is willing and eager to help folks and are open minded to receive it. So, yeah, my journey started with Fortune Builders. I started looking to do buy and holds. And so we had a little, discretionary income or saved on the side. And we wanted to just dive right in and create passive income, passive income, passive income. That's what everybody says. Passive income. The goal is get passive income, mailbox money. Warren Buffett, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you're working till you die. And so that's where we started out is looking to buy rental properties. And the biggest question for me was like, okay, well, where do I get the money? And like, how do I know what a good deal is? And so that's where my kind of journey into real estate and not just real estate, but just finances and financial literacy and all of that began was through the Fortune Builders program and how to just buy rental properties, not necessarily with your own money, even utilizing other people's money. And so that's kind of where I began.
Okay, well, that sounds great, Tara. Sounds like we were talking about before, how even though we started in fortune builders, it seems like you had a more narrow vision than I did, since I was more on the wholesale side and you were more on the buy and hold, to where you actually knew what you wanted. And so, as far as for me, I think I like to share a lot. The main one of the main hurdles when I first started was going through the curriculum and like going through it in a week, like, oh man, I'm ready to wholesale. And so when I went to look at Zillow, and I'm like, I called my coach. And I'm like, hey, coach, I don't see no price on here. Where'd I get these numbers from? And like, where are you at? Like, I'm in Texas. Like, that's a non-disclosure state. Like, what does that mean? That means the, the prices are not going to be disclosed. Like, oh crap, what do I have to do? You have to go out there. You have to go network. You either have to go to real estate events or get with a real estate agent. So, with you, what would you say was one of your first hurdles when you first jumped in? Because obviously, I'm sure there are some hurdles that we like to share with people and not know that everything is, all rainbows and
Yeah.
possibilities.
Well, we had a ton of hurdles, a ton of hurdles, and I will say we were fortunate enough to where, the finding the money once I understood where to go get the money wasn't the biggest issue because we did some private money lending. We were able to we took advantage of solo 401ks. You might hear self-directed IRAs as well.
Right.
I did a solo 401k, and that's how I was able to acquire my first rental property for the down payment on it.
Nice.
So it once I learned where to go access the money, that was my first question in my head,
Mhm.
but it wasn't my first hurdle once I kind of understood how to go access funds. And so once I got the property, I'd say one of the biggest hurdles was tenants, was figuring out
Wow.
was figuring out how to properly vet tenants and not believing every sob story. And I've had some horror stories with tenants. They sued a tenant, evicted a tenant, all that kind of stuff to where tenant selection and me trying to property manage and vet tenants, a big learning curve there. And so I'd say that was the biggest hurdle where I am kind of jaded by tenants in the
Wow.
sense of being a buy and hold investor. They are so important to selecting the right one is so important to the success of the asset. If they tear up a property, if they skip on rent, If they, give you every sob story of this, that, and a third, if they, if they're professional tenants and they know how to game the system, even being in a state like Texas, which is, it has been classically a landlord friendly state, there are still
Right.
rules and things that you have to follow. So I would say for me, my biggest hurdle was finding and selecting the right tenants for the property,
Mhm.
which I admittedly was just not very good at. Quite
Right.
frankly, just was not very good at it, and had, more than my share of bad ones. And so I take that one on the chest. I take that one on the chin, wherever you want to punch me in the gut on that. I take that and take full accountability and responsibility, but just thankful enough, it didn't knock us out of the game. I was still
Got it.
able to live to see another day.
Okay, Tara. And as far as that obstacle and learning from it, do you still deal with that, or at where you're at now, do you have other people that help you out with
Yeah,
that?
so I finally wised up and got property management. And so
There you go.
I'm glad that I did it the way that I did on the front end, because I don't think I would have appreciated property management as much as if I had just went to straight property management. I'd have looked at it like, oh, well, I could do that. I mean, it's not like the 80s where you got to go knock on the door for rent. It's all online, and they use ACH and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that I did property manage the first week, probably the first 4 or 5 properties that we had. I
Mhm.
property managed them myself, where I was showing the property and I was, doing the screening, and I use apartments.com and stuff like that for their screening mechanisms. But I'm glad I did it, because I do have a level of appreciation for property management and the labor intensiveness that can go into it, or that is in it. So I'm glad that I did it the way that I did. But now that I know better, I will, any property that I acquire now is going to be on property management for tenant selection, and just being able to take that headache. You hear about the tenants, the toilets, the 2 a.m. phone calls, like that is all very well and true. I remember trying to, organize my son's second birthday, and we're getting calls like, oh, there's a water leak in the house, da, da, da. And I'm trying to organize, at a park, a 2-year-old's birthday party, while still trying to, it's an emergency for them. Like, there's a water leak in the property, da, 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 da. So definitely having property management on site. But then now, once I put them on property management, it just became more asset management, and managing the property manager, and making sure that your incentives are aligned, that they're keeping costs down at the property, that they're putting in proper tenants based on things. If you don't want smokers, if you don't want pets, it's your asset, that's your choice. I don't, a lot of people have pets, but if I don't want them in my house, make sure these people don't have pets. And
Right.
there's lots of people that smoke, but if I don't want it in my house, then make sure that we don't have smokers, and just trying to make sure that you guys are working together to make that asset a success.
Got it. Got it, man. Sounds interesting. And at this moment, do you still have those rentals, or where are you at right now with
Yep.
that?
So we got up to about 10 rentals, and then we sold half of them. That was kind of the shift into what I do now with the investment club and power pool fund. So yeah, I still have a handful of rentals that we still have. And I'm not looking to double that up anymore, and I'm
Mhm.
not looking to really sell off any more of them. Kind of just, this is a good 5 that we have, so let's just kind of steady Eddie, see how it goes, and we'll figure out when the best time to exit them. The first thought was, oh, maybe we'll give it to our children, or maybe we won't, maybe we'll use that as their college education, maybe we won't. So not 100% sure on the exit strategy with them yet, but
Mhm.
we still have them. They're in a much better place than when I was property managing them now.
Right.
So so we do still have a handful of them, and just kind of we'll see when we decide, or if we decide to divest those. But we got up to, like I said, about 10 of them, and we did sell half of the portfolio, and we started to divert that into truly passive investments through private equity and commercial syndications, and kind of what we do now, in our passive investing journey.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, sounds good. Tara, like I said, from the the on the wholesaling side, when I'm calling sellers, when it is quote unquote being that tire landlord, where I do understand, but most of them are doing it like say the way you can explain, actually having a property manager built into your, I guess the pay structure of how the the funds are getting distributed, to where now I understand when we are speaking with the quote unquote the older or the actual tire landlords, they're so tired because they were so busy doing everything at the beginning, continuing it throughout the properties they managed. But obviously, that probably wouldn't be you. And so, with that question, I guess I had a little side question for that. When I am speaking to a quote unquote tiny landlord, obviously at your stage, you're trying to get all of it out of it because you're
Yeah.
trying to move into something larger. So, do you normally just convert those into retail sales to where you can put it in a 1031, or how's your strategy so far when you
Yeah, so I definitely was a tired landlord for sure. And just anytime I saw their email pop up, I'm like, what now? So yeah, when I decided to sell those, it was really we wanted to pull the equity out and get the capital. And so we didn't do 1031 exchanges. And it was just basically how we bought them and how they were structured, because some were held in trusts and some were like like solo 401k trusts, and so they were owned by the trust,
nice.
and some were not. Some were just that we used with the funds from the trust to do. So it was just how we structured some of them. We didn't do 1031s, but we just were able to take that capital and still roll it into some other commercial deals. So to your question, if you're talking to a tired landlord, kind of how would they look if they're trying to get rid of their properties, how would they sell them? Yeah, most times I would say, at least from my perspective, they're looking for retail. They're not, unless they are financially distressed on the property,
Mhm.
or if say maybe a tenant totally just ravaged the property and they don't want to put up the money to fix it up to make it for retail. But for ours, we did, and so we sold them all retail. But you can, I'd say, is there are those tired landlords that the property's damaged, they don't want to deal with it anymore, they just want out of it. And yeah, that's where the iron is hot to strike on those, to where they just want to be out of it. They don't. There's not enough money to pay for the aggravation anymore. It's kind of the best way to put it. Like, there's no amount of money that will pay for your peace. Will pay for your peace of
True,
mind.
true.
Will pay for your stress. And so they may be willing to sell it at below market value because they just want to get out of it. So whether it's the property's damaged and it will end up being a flip project or a renovation for someone that's wholesaling it, or an in buyer,
Mhm.
or let's say the property's fine, but maybe they're just financially strapped. They've had to evict. They haven't collected rent in however many months. They don't have any more money to put into it, and so they just need to get it off of their financial books. Just to just cut the dead weight. And so they're willing to sell it for whatever someone's willing to buy it for, just to get rid of it. And so you might be able to pick up a great property with that. So it's really just understanding what is the issue with the property. So for ours, the ones that were damaged, we did put the money in to fix them, to and because we were able to get that return, twofold on the back end by the money that we put into it to get it ready for a retail buyer. But there again, you just have to dig in to see what the seller situation is. If they just are willing to get rid of it, they can get rid of it. If the property's damaged, they don't want to put any more money into it. Maybe they don't have the property's fine, but because they haven't had a tenant, or they have to pay for eviction stuff or for attorneys and all that, they don't have enough money to keep up with the mortgage note, or keep up with even the property taxes, which is continually going up, the insurance. So the property may be fine, but the finances on the deal, or just they don't have any more money to put into it. So you really just got to dig in and find out why they're looking to sell, what their motivation is, and you can then focus on that to be able to pick up a deal below market, that is a win-win for both, because they're ready to get rid of it and you're providing that solution for them to get rid of it. And even though someone else on the outside might look, well, why would they just give away a great property for and not sell it retail? Well, because of those reasons. They don't have any more money to put into it, and it costs money to even sell a property, and so they don't have that, and they just need to get it off of their books, maybe get the debt off out of their name. Who knows their situation. So that's where you really just kind of got to dig in to find it. But for me personally, it was more of, I'm a tired landlord. I just want out of dealing with these tenants and the constant maintenance requests and issues. But I didn't want to take a loss on it, so we just were patient and put it on retail, put whatever we need to do it to make it look pristine, and we sold it retail.
Got it, got it. Okay. And as far as I guess because like we're I guess like we were talking about earlier, we were taught that passive income would be getting long term rentals, and then from what you're learning, like it's good, but I rather get something higher. So does that where we lead to the next part where you're at right now? Other than making beautiful babies, it is creating these funds to collect money, and how does that work?
Yeah, well, so with single family rentals, yes, there's the when you're doing it how we were doing it, there are turnkey providers that will buy the property, renovate it, sell it to you at retail. They will continue to property manage it, and it is just you own the asset, but they are running it for you. We didn't start off doing that. We were buying, fixing them up, and then renting them out, and not burring, because we didn't, yeah, we were kind of burring because some of them we were buying a fair market value, and there wasn't a lot that needed to be to be done to it. And some of them needed a lot of work done to them. So, but we were just buying and holding them. And once we moved them onto property management, that definitely took a lot off of our plate. And so it became more passive, but again, we still had to kind of make sure we were in touch, pretty regularly with the property manager to make sure, expenses were down, whatever maintenance issues came up, that we were trying to keep long-term tenants and not just having a year, then having to do a turn every year. So, so it still was kind of, I would say, semi-passive, but a lot more passive than when we were property managing. So fast forward, then I'm like looking at the returns on both, a cash on cash and just an annualized return on what we were getting on rental properties. We were always seeking double digits, at least 10% or more. And we still do in our real estate investing now. We're seeking always double digit returns, so 10% plus. On a rental property, 8%, 10%. We were, doing backflips and we saw 12% annualized returns. And then when we're looking at the cash on cash, 5 years ago, 300, 400 was pretty decent. Today, if you can get 100 to 200, you're doing pretty good on the rental property, just how the market has shifted. So as I started to look at, we would get emails, the more, involved in this real estate space you get, you're going to start seeing different, receiving communication on different ways of investing. So single family rentals, what we thought out the gate, oh, that's what we could do. But then we started shifting to commercial, and I started looking at multifamily and maybe land and industrial real estate, and just looking at, comparing the projections that I was doing on my pro formas for the single family, like, whoa, 11%, yay. These were at 15%, 17% projections. And then when I started to look at, actuals, or basically their track record, a lot of them will close out at maybe 30% returns or 20% returns, or have an equity multiple of a 2 or 1.7, which I'm thinking, okay, for easy math, you take $100,000 investment, with a 1.7 equity multiple, when it's all said and done, you're coming out with 170, or $100,000 investment at a 2 equity multiple, you're coming out with a $200,000 return. So you basically, you're doubling your money, or you're growing it from 100 to 170,000. So I'm looking at, okay, and the down payment on the single family rentals, when you're buying them, you need at least 20, 25% down, unless you're house hacking, where you're, trying to get a VA or FHA loan and you're putting 3% down, 5% down. That's one thing. But, we had a family already. We were established. We weren't doing the house hacking thing. So, we were just buying with conventional financing, putting 20, 25% down.
Wow.
Well, looking at fair market value, that is, 30, 40, 50, $80,000 or whatever, depending on the price point of the house. So, but with on the commercial syndication side, 50K is a lot of times the minimum. 50 to 100K, depending on the operator and what kind of deal it is the minimum. So I'm like, okay, well, if I'm putting 50, 75K down on a single family rental, I can put that same down payment and have a lot less, active
Pressure.
activities in the game. So I could take that same down payment, put it towards, the syndication, and be a limited partner in a multifamily deal. So now I'm sitting back and trusting that operator to run the deal. And I'm just waiting on the quarterly or monthly or whatever the distributions, what I call the dings in my email. Ding, you just got a distribution of X amount of dollars. Ding, you just got paid this. Ding, you just got that. So to me, it sounded like a much better, way for those that are, doing this deep into that space, that are doing it full time. That is what they do. They're not, doing it as their side hustle or they're kind of, at nighttime thing. This is what they do. And so then it became a matter of finding and scouting those operators that we could put our faith in, that would be good stewards of our capital, and taking what we would do as a down payment, but putting that towards these deals and having them execute on the business plan, being a limited partner. And so that's what we began to do when we started selling off the properties. We really wanted to be a lot more hands-off. We really were looking for that passive income where we could still have our time freedom, because that's the biggest thing. Once you have your finances, that gives you the freedom to be able, what I say, this would be a little bit vulgar. I'm like, my 3 F's, finances leads to freedom. To lead you to say, fuck you. So it's like, you can say, F this, I don't want to, go to that job tomorrow, or F this, I don't want to have to, work in the coal mines anymore or whatever. So, having the finances ultimately leads to that freedom for you to be able to give 0 F's about whatever, and you have the choice to choose. And so for that, we wanted to, now that we figured out how to be able to access the capital, be able to do the deals, we just started to redirect that from single family, and where we were still heavily involved, to the commercial syndication space, where it was basically the same cash outlay or quote unquote, the down payment, but now the operator is running the deal, and you give up some control. But if you're okay with that, I mean, that your control is sourcing and scouting and working with people that you trust, the operators that you trust, that you know are going to be good stewards of your capital, and they're going to be able to execute on the business plan. And they have more experience, in that, because that's what they do. I'm a commercial insurance broker by profession, and my husband is an accountant
Oh,
and
nice.
CPA by profession. So ask me anything about insurance, I'm your girl. Ask him about taxes and CPA and accounting, he's your guy. But when it comes to running an asset and effectively, renovating it and putting tenants in place and increasing revenue and decreasing expenses, those folks that do that those are the ones that I want to hitch my wagon to, so to speak, to be able to do it effectively and properly. And it's about trying to sift through all those operators that are doing, not just saying they can do it, but have done it, can do it, and continue to do it, and kind of sifting through kind of the BS, so to speak, to be able to attach your funds to those operators that will execute and be good stewards of your capital.
Gotcha, Tara. And I love how you said the BS, and I'm noticing a lot of
I'm like,
times.
I hope this is not a kid friendly
No, no, no,
podcast.
no, no. The fact that you said BS is more like, because it is. I've been told when you go to a kind of like typical question, "Hey George, how's your business?" I'm like, "Crap, man, I haven't closed nothing this month." But it's going, it's going. So it's really trying to figure out what do you mean when you say business? And so when you brought up BS, a lot of times in this industry we do believe the hype sometimes, but it is really understanding and going back to what we're talking about with the really figuring out what the seller's problem is, and if they're willing to give up that price. So with you switching over from long-term rentals to syndication, where do you go to find those people? Because from my experience in networking, I'm usually meeting wholesalers, buyers, lenders, and it went over my head. But if I ask them, oh, I'm a syndicator, like, or is that the title that you would ask about? And
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different terms. There's a syndicator. There's the term called a sponsor. They're a general partner. So it's a general partner, limited partner relationship where we're the limited partner, or the LP. They're the general partner, the GP. The term operator, they're an operator of a
Mhm.
deal. So commercial syndications, private equity. So there's a lot of different terms, in the space, and that's why I'm glad we're able to have this conversation, because it is similar but different. So very similar to what we do on the wholesaling and flipping side, but very different as well. And so the short answer is networking and just asking around. Like, I've attended a couple of conferences and different sponsors there, and then just start meeting people, and who are you working with, and what operators are you working with. And so wholesaling is not, I would say, what they do in that space.
Mhm.
But if you're looking for an operator or someone maybe to that maybe they can buy a multifamily deal from, because they're looking at big deals. I mean, they're looking at multi-million-dollar deals.
Right.
And then there are those that have funds that will do single family. And so, the ones that I've come across it's a fund of a bunch of single family. Like, they may have hundreds of single family
Yeah.
houses. It's not like one. So I mean, and it really just depends on the operator, because there are larger syndicators that we work with. There's some mid-size, and there are the smaller ones. And maybe some of the smaller ones are they may bundle a few houses, maybe say 5 or 10, and they're seeking either capital, for the deal, or equity partners on the deal. So it really just depends on the operator. Because like I said, there's, like anything, there's small, medium size, there's small businesses, there's mid-sized businesses, and there's those global corporations. So it really just depends. But how I found them was really, starting online, but then really just, attending some networking events and asking people, like, who are you
Mhm.
working with? Who do you like? As referrals, are kind of the best way. And so I started also using a site called Invest Clearly, and it's a platform for limited partners to go on and and put reviews on operators that they've
Mhm.
worked with. And so, and then also operators will post their deals and can be on the site as well. And so it's a community to try to help create transparency for the GPLP relationship, where limited partners will, tell about their experience, kind of like Google reviews, but for operators.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I love how you mentioned that, because I had just attended the Squad Up Summit in Dallas, and I remember somebody asked a question to, I guess, a higher level person that hey, I'm trying to raise, I think, $3 million, and how do you do it? I'm scared of all the regulations. And so the guy, I love his answer. He said, bro, you're having that limited mindset because you're bringing up all these excuses. Like, why don't you go to the source, understand the guidelines, so you know where to keep within the parameters, but also understanding that it's probably going to be easier to raise $3 million than it is 300,000, because like you're saying, there's more people involved in that $3 million transaction, and so it's less risk compared to just coming in at $300,000 and being all in, and if it falls, or it just goes to crap, you're out $300,000 compared to what you're explaining. There's still risk, but you don't feel that pain as much, and obviously the operator has the experience to where you are going to be able to review him like a Google review to move
Yeah,
forward.
yeah. You try to sift through, and kind of what I should say, bob and weave, through the operators that are just kind of putting out numbers and putting out, great sounding stories, because that's their deal. They're trying to raise capital, so they're throwing out all kinds of stories and numbers and deals, and so that's the whole part of due diligence, is trying to kind of sift through that. And
Mhm.
when it's all said and done, I go back to, what is that gut feeling too? Do you get a
True.
warm fuzzy from them? Because people can put out stuff all you want. You can try to, Google and ChatGPT and talk to people and find, dig as much as you can. But, at the end of the day, if you don't get a warm fuzzy, don't do it. And the way I figure, it's your money. You can, you do what you choose to do with your money. And so don't do it if you don't, at the end of the day, get that warm fuzzy feeling despite all of your due diligence. And if you just get a bad feeling about it, no matter how much everything sounds and looks great, then
Mhm.
don't do it. That's your choice. I always say there's just another deal right around the river bend. So just keep, with what your standards are and what you believe. And because there will be another deal. Like there are no shortages of
Yeah. True.
someone is always still going to be looking for your money some way,
True.
somehow.
True.
And
True.
so to that person, if they're trying to raise 300,000 or 3 million, a lot of it starts with true one-on-one private money lending, starting off with friends and family. Would they lend you money? Would they be equity
True.
partners in a deal with you? Would they do that with you? And if you can't convince them and they know, like, and trust you already, then why would I, who doesn't, I mean, know you, and, and I may like you, but do I trust you yet? I don't know. I may trust you
True.
to call me back, but do I trust wiring 50,000 to you or whatever?
Right.
To be determined. So you start with your kind of inner circle and you work your way out. And that's what I did when I started Power Pool Fund, which is the real estate investment club. Is I started just with friends and family, people that stood at my husband and I's wedding, that were,
Nice.
bridesmaids and groomsmen. And for me, I wasn't raising capital. I was looking to pool capital. So it wasn't a capital raise for my deal. It was more of, I want to do these deals, but 50,000 is a lot to do every month for anybody. I mean, that's for the everyday retail investor, that's a lot to do. But if you want to consistently kind of do deals, maybe I can do 5 or 10K a month, depending on the month, on the year,
Right.
what capital events we have going on. So, but just taking those smaller amounts and investing and pooling it with, say my 5K, your 5K, they've got 10, they've got 15. Now we've pooled enough to be able to pull together 50,000 and be able to do those deals. And it's a lot easier to sleep at night only having 5 or 10K in a deal than it is with 50 or 100K in a deal. And so, and nobody wants to lose money ever, but losing $10,000 is a lot easier to recover from than losing $100,000 in a deal. And so that's why I like being able to take smaller amounts and spread the chips across the table, across operators, across asset classes, whether it's land, industrial, multifamily, retail, spread it across geographies, the Midwest, it's Florida, Texas, wherever. You can spread it across geography, spread it across different operators, but only have, say, maybe, I'd say 5 to 25K at a time, as opposed to 50 or 100K or more at a time. And we do that by pooling it with other friends and family, with other people, to be able to get in on those deals without, okay, that was 50K. That was our whole investment capital for the year. Better go good. Hope I made a good decision, and you're just kind of on a hope and a prayer at night. So it really de-risks the investment when you're pooling capital at smaller amounts to be able to do these bigger deals. And so you're not 50% owner of it. You might be, 1% or whatnot, but
Right.
1% of, a big number is a lot better than 100% of a small number for
True.
sure.
True. It's man, I love that analogy you just mentioned, Tara, because it is kind of like on the wholesaling side where you're needing help to get to that one deal, but knowing that I can do all these roles, but I'm getting tired. To where can I either leverage, if I don't have the capital, can I leverage time in the order to get the deal in front of us, get it in front of the buyer, then be able to get a nice little assignment fee, but be able to distribute that money where, oh man, I could have got a 15K by myself, but I would have done a lot of work. But the goal is to get that maybe 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah. And I'm sure you would take, for less work, you'd take on a 15,000 assignment, you take 5,000 for less work and do that 2 or 3 times. Then you're dragging with the broken leg, the eyeball falling out, you're, dragging your peg leg alongside you,
True.
just to get that full 15,000. So, kind of doing more deals than just putting all your effort, time, and energy into one deal to get that one payout where you can have a lot less stress and have a lot less work, but do it more consistently.
Facts. Got it, sir. And right now, for the Power Pool Fund, because I believe you didn't just start off getting the fund, right? You just worked your way inside different groups and tried it out yourself, and then one day you decided, why don't I just start this myself?
Yeah, well, I just did. So I did, one syndication, our first syndication that we did, and I was like, okay, well, there goes 50 grand. So now what? And we did it like early in the year. It was like March. So it was like, okay, so we're just, how do I continue to do more deals? It was really unexciting. It was like, okay, we did our due diligence. We felt confident. We felt comfortable, sent the money. Now what? And so I'm like, well, and again, that was all the capital was tied up in that one deal.
Right.
So wanting to do more deals, that's where I had the idea where, I'm not going to have 50K every week, every month, or whatever to do a deal. So if I want to consistently, be tied to different deals and opportunities that I see come across my desk, how can I do that more consistently? And so that's where the concept came up. And investment clubs have been around since investing has been a thing. I remember I heard about Warren Buffett when he was like 14 or something like that, starting his first investment club where they were doing stocks and they would come together and talk about different stocks. And so it's not a new concept at all. A lot of it, when you hear it though, people think stock investing, where you're pooling capital or you're, sharing stock tips and advice and you guys are investing together in a stock portfolio. So this is the same kind of concept. It's just with real estate where we're looking at bigger deals. So even if it was a single family deal or whatnot, we could look at that and say, okay, do we want to pool our money to purchase a house? And now we all are owners in this house. That's the same exact concept. We're doing it in real estate, just taking smaller amounts, not having to come up with that full, let's say $200,000 for the house, but maybe we come up, each person comes up with 10,000. I have 10,000. George has 10,000. ABC, John, Jan, Cindy, whatever has $10,000, and we just come together and we form an LLC and we acquire that property or whatever investment that we're doing, or lending. We've done that where we've loaned funds, where we all pooled money and loaned out funds. So even if we don't want the deal to go bad, of course, but if it does, no one's on the hook for the entire amount of capital. So yeah.
And in those scenarios, obviously, and I guess I'm kind of relating back to wholesaling to kind of like use that analogy on those deals that go to craps. Just like if a deal, we put EMD down and we fail our inspection period, we lose that money. So on your side, like say if I came in with $5,000 on a potential deal, what are the what is the I guess, is there any way to fix that, or kind of goes back to what you said, you knew the risk when you had it, or would you try to make that right with me on the next deal, or being able to explain, hey George, you're not the only one that lost, everybody lost.
Yeah. So if we're going in on a deal, like if you're a member of the club and you're going in on a deal, that we're entrusting that GP or that sponsor, that general partner, that operator is going to execute successfully on that deal. But as we're seeing a lot in the multifamily space right now, they're struggling. They're having a tough time with the surging interest rates and, expenses like insurance and increasing, their margins are so thin and you can't increase, rents as fast as the expenses are increasing. And as much as, so they're struggling right now. So with that, let's just say if a deal went completely south and went bad, everyone on that deal is losing out. Yeah. So that's a part of investing. You can lose. You put your money in the stock market. We saw what's happened over the past 2 weeks. Yes. You're not going to Coca-Cola and saying, hey, I want my money back. I mean, that's the nature of you buying that stock or buying into that ETF or buying into that real estate. There is real risk in investing, just like with crypto. There's real risk that that's. Was that guy from Sam Bankman Fried or whatever, like there's real risk that Tom Brady took when he lost all that money. I mean, so that's with anything with investing. And so I always say, you don't use the money that you need, that you're going to need to pay your light bill, or that you're going to need to, pay the mortgage or pay your own rent. And you use that, your discretionary income, the money, the savings, the money that you set aside for investing, that's the funds that you use. And or like I said, self-directed IRAs, solo 401ks are ways to tax-free utilize your retirement account funds to invest. And depending where you're at in your lifespan, if you're nearing retirement, I probably wouldn't touch that for, if you're right at 65. But if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, I always look at it like kind of 20-year gaps, 25 to 45, you're in accumulation stage. So you can take the most risk. And that's even if you notice your stock portfolio, that's what they do. You're all equities, all stocks and stuff, and less in cash and less in bonds. Probably like 45 to 65. That's when you're kind of in transition. You're looking towards, okay, I need to start transitioning more out of the more higher risk investments that are yielding a higher return, but something a little more conservative, because I'm starting to near retirement. I need to kind of, make sure I'm coasting into retirement. It's not just like a drop off where it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I have no liquid capital. And then 65 until, whenever good Lord calls us home, that's when you're probably, you're in your cash flow stage where all your investments are really just steady eddies, as lowest risk as you can find. But even still, there is still some risk. There's risk with holding money in cash, because the $100,000 in a bank account today cannot buy you the same amount, tomorrow that it can today. So this time next year, just due to inflation, that $100,000 value is going to go down. And so just even people think it's safe. They're just, as long as it's safe and sitting there, in cash, like you're losing money just for the simple fact of inflation. So that $100,000 won't be able to buy you as much in the future than it can today. And so that's why, to hedge against that inflation, real estate is a great place to put that money and park that money. But like you said, on your wholesale deal, if you aren't able to complete it on the back end and you lose that money, that's the risk that you're taking by being an investor. And so that, yes, there are a lot of real risks in investing, and you try to do all your due diligence. We throw that word around so much. There's so much, that falls into the well of due diligence, but you try to do as best you can to avoid those landmines and to avoid stepping on them. And as much as you can, going in eyes wide open with as much confidence and faith as you feel that it's going to be a good investment. And so you put your money down on Black 23 and you let it ride. So once you done all that you think you can do to make sure you're investing your money in what you think is a good investment for you.
Got it, Terra. And so, right now you stating what's going on in the world, and obviously everything is a risk. Do you guys still pursue the same direction, or how's your, I guess your look at the potential opportunity right now?
I still see everything's an opportunity. Warren Buffett, one of the most famous investors, when he talks about one of his famous quote, when people are fearful, be greedy. When people are greedy, be fearful.
Yeah.
So I think as far as in the real estate space in particular, there's always opportunity out there. And it's just really, consistently evaluating sponsors and deals and markets and opportunities to be able to kind of develop an eye for the opportunity. And the opportunity to me will be different from the opportunity for you based on where we're at in our life. Is someone that's a single person that is just getting out of college, and they've got their life ahead of them. Their opportunity is going to be a lot different than a mom with 3 children, who's got to be planning for their future as well. So, but I think it's really, for me, it's just a matter of constantly doing it. So it's easy to pass up on opportunities, and so I'm slow to say yes to an opportunity, but I'm always looking for a yes. I'm always telling myself I want to find a yes. But if one of my red flags raises up, I know there will be, as I mentioned earlier, just another deal right around the river bend. So I'm not afraid to pass up on an opportunity because of something. So even with all's going on in, with the tariffs and, the interest rates and things like that, from a real estate perspective, I do believe there's always still opportunity out there. And it's just a matter of still sticking to your guns and sticking to what you say I do or don't want to do, and trying to just move ahead with caution, but always looking for a way to say yes, but not being afraid to just say no. Nope, that's not a good one, because there'll be another deal. But I'm not the one that looks for reasons to say no to a deal. I'm looking for reasons to say yes, but I'm not afraid to say no, because I know that I can easily say no because there'll be another one. George, what's your next deal? What do you need? There's always someone that's looking for capital and for a deal, and I'm looking for partners that are willing to put out the sweat equity, because I don't want to. If I have the capital, that's the win-win in the relationship. But if I've got the capital, or members within our club have the capital to put towards a deal, we're not looking to be very active, and we're not looking to go out and wholesale and making the phone calls and all that. We're entrusting you to be able to do that. And for you doing that sweat equity, that's where our capital comes in at. And so as long as you're willing to do the hard work, our operators are willing to do hard work, I'm willing to put up the capital for the returns, for the
Right.
returns. We always want to make the returns. I'm not giving them capital because it's charity and because I just think you're a good person. I'm looking for a return. And
Right.
this is not a like you're out game.
True.
If you mess up and lose my money once, I probably won't work with you anymore.
Yeah.
So or if you don't at least meet it around, what the expectations are, you're
Hmm.
probably never going to see my money again. Kind of like they say, don't lend to family because they don't think that will ruin the relationship. So
True.
I try to do my best on the front end of picking good sponsors and picking good partners or whatever like yourself to work with. But if you fall short, it's going to be a much harder uphill battle for me to invest again. Not to say that I won't, but it will be a lot. I'll take a lot of lessons learned from it, and we'll scrutinize you and how you're operating a lot more, in the future. If I decide to tie my money to you again.
Love that. Love that. It's a back to the old fashioned the phrase of relationships.
Yeah, it
Doing
comes
your
back to
due diligence.
relationships, and that's very there because we have a deal that's not going as planned right now. Where we're supposed to close out of it in December, and now we're not looking till July. But being in communication and having a good relationship with the operator, I'm still confident that we're gonna close out and we're still gonna do well and probably do better because now the interest on the deal is has accelerated, because they missed the maturity date. But I'm still
Right.
confident in the operator that's running the deal, that and confident in the relationship and preserving that relationship, that I, even though it's delayed, it's a delayed maturity, I still think we'll be able to close out successfully on the deal. And so just to be determined on it, but
Mhm.
I'm still confident in the deal, even though we've hit some hiccups and some road bumps in the deal, and we haven't closed out in December like we thought we were going to.
Gotcha, Tara. Okay. And I did, while I was listening to you explain everything, I was curious because I do know when I first started, I did have some people say like, "Hey, because I was previously in the post office and in the army, so I have a lot of older. Well, I think they're about my age. Not to say everybody's older than me, but hey, George, once I see you taking action, I would love to invest in you. But for anybody listening, or maybe not wanting to, invest in myself or possibly be interested in investing in a syndication, what would be a advice you would tell them, or how would they start? Because I don't quite understand the whole moving this money from this account to this one, and reaping the benefits of properly investing in real estate transactions like you may have, or
Yeah, well, I
opportunity.
mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, a lot of it's relationships, and so people they don't even know they know you, so they
Mhm.
know you're doing something in real estate, and they're like, I want to be invested in real estate. George, what deal can I invest with you on? I mean, that's classic 101. That's the best kind of way to raise capital or get equity partners or whatever, is those relationships, exactly what you just described. And so and I think that's beautiful that you have that. And so if you need earnest money or down payments on properties, I know you do a lot more on the wholesaling side, so
Right.
whatever capital, because from my understanding with wholesaling, you don't need a lot of capital to start. You might just need some earnest money for the down payment. You don't need a lot of capital, but you
True.
need some.
Yes,
um
something. Not
yeah.
just a beautiful smile. You got to put some money up front, and hopefully that spread is big enough to where you can return that money to that person, and obviously bring back some for the team as well.
Yeah. And I would say to folks, because a lot you hear just kind of high level on, people, what you call them, the gurus or whatever. Oh, you don't need any money to get invested in real estate. You don't need any money to start. And I call bullshit on that, because you do need money. You may not need your own money, but you definitely need money to
True.
do stuff in real estate. Like you said, wholesaling is kind of, step one if you want to get into real estate. You don't have a lot of capital, but you need something. You can't literally be sitting at zero and
True.
and just be like, okay, yeah, person, let me put your house under contract. I'm not going to give you any option period money, any earnest money, anything. Let me just put it under contract, and then we'll get some money on the back end. Just trust me.
Trust me. Yeah.
I don't believe I'm not a wholesaler. I don't think it works like that. I think you need to put down something. I don't
Something.
know what
Yeah.
that amount is, but whatever you negotiate, but something. And
Mhm.
so that's the thing. But I know there are people that do like earnest money deposits, where if you don't have money, so you do need money, but maybe just not your own. But it's about learning education. I'm huge on education. It's about learning those ways. Like I said, my biggest question is, where do you get money to just buy cash? Who's just buying houses cash like that?
Right.
But now that I know, there's a lot of ways to be able to access capital, even though it may or may not be sitting in your bank account, but it could be sitting in another account that you didn't know that you could utilize, like a retirement account or someone else's account that you could utilize for that. So yeah, you do need some capital to start. But in it, I think just learning the different ways to be able to access capital
Mhm.
is big. And so I've learned a ton of those ways, and I love sharing those ways to different club members. In Powerful Fund, it's like, these are other ways that you can invest in deals and access capital and
Mhm.
really arbitrage your finances, to be able to get in on deals, and make a return and keep the spread.
Okay. Well, that sounds good, Tara. And obviously, at the end of this call, I know I want to get your information so I can share it when I post this on YouTube to have the description and people to reach out to you. And what will be the best way, other than maybe your email, or is that the main way you suggest?
Yeah, so we have a website, powerpoolfund.com. So that's one way folks can reach out. And on the website, there's a link where you can schedule a call. And so you can schedule a call with me. You'll actually get me.
Oh man,
Schedule a call. I'm a small business right now, so I don't have a whole big team of folks. So,
not yet, not
so
yet.
not yet, not yet. So it is me. But yeah, the website, powerpoolfund.com. And then, yes, my email is info@powerpoolfund.com. And so you can reach out for questions there. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all at powerpoolfund.com. It's spelled exactly how it sounds, powerpoolfund.com, on all those, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. And so I love talking passive investing. I love talking real estate. I'm extremely passionate about it. I say I have a passion for passive. My passion is finding ways to just keep the dings coming in my email inbox. Ding, you got wire money. Ding, you just made this. Ding, you just earned that. So all while, sitting at home, sitting on the beach. This weekend I'll be in Texas wine country, going to wine country. Maybe I'll get a ding this for someone, paying out a return on something. And and it's a win-win for both. So they were looking for capital. We had some capital to deploy, and we're looking for a return. So I like getting those dings. That means my money's coming back greater than what it left me at. So
There you go. It's all about learning and growing, and keep pushing, and obviously have something ready for your kids when they get to the age, and hopefully continue the lineage of
yeah, I
income.
do this thing. We have these for Christmas. We got on these financial literacy cards,
Oh,
and so
nice.
my kids are 6, 4, and 10 weeks. So for the 6 and the 4-year-old, we're starting financial literacy. At night, we'll just pick a card and talk about like what's revenue or what's
Wow.
depreciation or what's income. That different words, and I repeat after me and say, my oldest, he wants to be a lawn guy when he grows up. He loves everything lawnmowers and
Nice.
trimmers and doing the lawn. And when the lawn guys come, he's like out there with them trying to help. And so I said, okay, so that's active income. So, but what do you do now once you active income? How do you get active income? I can mow the lawn and get active income. Yes, I can pull up the weeds and get active income. It's like yes. So
Nice.
it's fun just trying to teach them to be, because they're not going to get that in school, as we well
True.
know. So teaching them just to be financially literate kids. And when he gets like tooth fairy money, I'm like, okay, so what are you going to do with it? Now he's starting to say, invest it, invest it. And so I love being able to teach them, the things that I wasn't taught, that I didn't learn into adulthood, but have them growing up thinking about these things and thinking about, being financially sound and financially literate. So it's not just about giving them a house or giving them fish, that in the biblical terms, you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. You teach a man how to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. And so I want to teach them about being able to fish and do something greater than even what his parents are doing now. So to continue and come up with his own ideas to grow his own business or whatever he wants to do in life. But just giving him the tools to be able to teach him how to walk this road on his own without just handing him something and hoping that he can preserve it or keep it or knows how to manage it.
True, man. I love to hear that, Tara. And like I said, it's been a pleasure seeing your journey and obviously getting to know you a little bit better aside from the people listening to this interview. And look forward to seeing maybe one day I can put into the power pool fund one day and be what do you call it? Not only be a seer, but actually be a person inside and being able to talk high things of you, highly of you so far, and even more in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to welcome you to the club. Like I say, you would bring a wealth of knowledge. People think, you have to be so experienced to do all this. Some of the, the greatest conversations that we have are with newer people because, they're thinking just from a pure perspective. Like, what about
Mhm.
this? What about that? It might be something that people that are more experienced and hadn't thought about in years, or maybe never even thought of. So, I mean, everyone brings their own perspective, and it's great that doing wholesaling, you understand real estate, period. So it's,
Yes.
you would bring a wealth of knowledge that, so I, just like the guy that you were saying at the thing, don't think of all the things that you can't do or all the objections. Don't put all the objections in front of you, out the gate. Just assume that you can do it and you've got it all figured out. And then,
Sure.
naturally, if you don't, someone will stop you, or the deal
Right.
will not go through or whatnot. So, but I think you would bring a wealth of knowledge just from your own experience as you're looking at deals. And people get intimidated by terms like, commercial syndications and private equity. And when you're talking, writing, big check sizes, they get intimidated by it.
Right.
And maybe the system might be designed to do that, to keep people out. It might be
Mhm.
designed that way, to keep those barriers high, that you don't know what you're doing. You have to be sophisticated and accredited and all this because you don't know what you're doing. And that very well be true for some, but I know for a fact not for all, and not for I know a lot of the members in my club. I know that's not the case, and I just always want to encourage and empower people that you probably know a lot more than what you think you know.
True.
And if you don't know it, you know where to go find the answer. You can utilize people in your network like myself and resources. You can utilize Chat GPT. Has been amazing. As far as just like, even better than Google. Ask it a question and see what it tells you. And ask around, ask to other people that that are in your networking groups that you're a part of, and you'd be surprised at what all you probably do know that you're not giving yourself credit for, that you think that you don't know, and what value you do bring, even just from your wholesaling side, looking into the commercial syndication side. You'd be surprised at what all that you do know and what value that would bring as you're evaluating these private equity deals.
Got it, man. Love it, Terra. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully, like I said, congratulations on the new bundle of joy,
The
and
new
obviously
edition,
celebrate
yes.
the tradition, keep it going, and I look forward to seeing bigger and better things from you, and I appreciate the time you gave me, and see you next time.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Yeah, I'll have the descriptions for to reach out to her right below in the descriptions, and thank you, and look forward to seeing the next interview with my next guest. Don't know who it is. Maybe Pace, maybe Mr. Pageant. I don't know. We'll see. Let me pause this.